Yo, yo, yo. Should flip
Yo,
this
yo.
around. Give
Oh,
JPB his own row.
yeah. Nice
What's up,
to
Hey,
gang?
meet you
hey,
down there.
welcome.
It's
Welcome,
good to see
welcome.
everybody.
Hello to everyone who's here in the chat. Um, Want to start it off. We have introduced him before, but introducing him again since we don't see him all that often. We've got Jonathan Berger, our Chief Product Officer. Yeah, I got my English right.
Down in the basement. Hello,
It's so
gang.
hard to think backwards.
Yeah, so welcome. Do you want to kick us off and maybe just give an overview of your role and your team and what you guys do and what is product for Record Shop?
That could be a long
Tell us.
conversation. But yeah, what is digital product at Record Shop? So, hello, my name is Jonathan B. Berger. I come from a design background. I've done a fair amount of engineering as well, and that made me kind of multilingual. So when people are building digital product and need to figure out what should we build and how do we know when we're done, that general set of questions that can drive engineering and kind of drive and also be driven by marketing and community and the communications with customers and users, that tends to be kind of where product lives. So my team and I are mostly spending our time thinking about, is the engineering team kind of fed and watered? Do they have what they need to be able to be productive and know what they're working on? And on the other side, how do we kind of take the vision laid out by Obi and contributed to by a bunch of others, and render that as kind of mostly software features, but also games? I'd argue that like challenges are part of product design because it's really about the user experience and how users and kind of the software and the community work together. So it's all that stuff. That's a highfalutin way of saying I manage story backlogs and try to validate hypotheses and get soundings from the market, figure out what we're doing and what we're doing right and how we can do more things right and fewer things not right.
Pretty good. That's pretty accurate, I would say.
Ask me again, see if you get the same answer
Now
twice in a row.
we know.
Yeah. If for anyone who like has never worked in software development, they're probably just like, what?
It's funny, dude. I was chatting with a bunch of friends who are also mostly like software developers and stuff like that, and product people, and everybody was talking about. There was sob stories about like renovations on their home. Like somebody had a contractor, and we kind of had this moment where like, oh, it's so different because in software development and product development, it's like figuring out the right thing and validating it is like 90% of the work, and ideally robots and computers kind of like execute the work and make it real. But when you're building a house, like that's totally inverted, right? Like everybody kind of knows that like it's a known thing how to like lay up some 4x4 2x4s and build a load bearing wall. But if you drop a 2-penny nail and the drain pan gets pierced by it, now you're like leaking water. You got to rip up the whole shower floor at great expense, and it's like a total mental flip. And we're like, that's why we're all terrible at home renovations, because we think the job is done long before the job is done.
It's an interesting
I
analogy.
never
I like
thought of
that.
it that way.
It is. It's completely backwards, though, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to like figure something out, but then it's like another thing to like mass produce it. I feel like I don't know. I feel like it kind of fills in those kind of two
Totally.
ideas.
I feel like music is kind of that way too, right? Because like the difference between sequencers and like programmed music and like playing it live, right? You get in the studio, you're laying everything down with sequence, and you're okay, cool, and you get really successful, and that's great. Now you got to go out and play it on tour, and maybe you're just hitting play, but maybe you want to kind of actually like play the music. And now, I mean, this is what Daft Punk did on Random Access Memories, right? They spent their whole career doing all this like recorded, synthesized, sequenced music, and they're like, shit, man, we got to hire like Neil Rogers. We got to like learn how to play these instruments. We got to make this disco sound analog and like legitimately. And it's so funny because for every disco act, they came up, they learned how to do that. They built their career. Daft Punk went the other direction, right? They built their career, and they gave them the room to like really learn how to play and do all that.
That is funny. I could definitely see the parallels there. That's awesome.
Sweet. Well, on these streams, we like to talk about what the heck product has been up to, what we've been delivering, and what is coming up next. And we've got a special, hopefully we get some feedback from our team, not from our team, but from our players.
That is our team, man. That's our team.
It is our
they
team.
are
No,
our
100%.
Extended team.
And I say that all the time, is that that's what drew me to Record Shop as a user, is that we do listen to feedback and we take that in. So we're hoping to get some feedback today on our homepage. We have done a quick little revamp where now at least it's pointing to our drops, but we'd love to hear what other people have to think. Maybe we got some homepage designers out in the audience. So what have we been doing lately?
Great question. Personally, I've been on vacation with my family, so I've been completely out of pocket, and dived back in today, and I'm kind of doing one of these like, oh, okay. And it's actually really fun to jump onto the show because it kind of forced me. We had a prep meeting earlier, and we're like, oh man, what are we going to talk about? And we just started, oh man, are we going to have enough time to talk about everything? But let's run down the list, right? Because like I think since the last time I came on the show, we've done a bunch of like kind of big things, right? We introduced mixing, which had formerly been known as crafting. We've been talking about it for a long time. It was something that was early on part of the vision. Like we've often said, like this isn't this isn't Top Shot for music. This isn't Spotify for NFTs. This is Roblox for EDM, right? This is about a world where the communities and the fans and the players and the people who love it and are invested and commune with each other in it get to inhabit it and build stuff. And I think that hews really nicely to like music fandom in general, right? When you go to like an established music scene, there are fanzines, there's fan art, like cover bands, like all of the kind of ephemeral cultural activity and cultural production that goes around it. Like that's what you're there for. I mean, you're also there for like sweet jams and, getting drunk with your friends, but you could go to, there's other ways that you can do that. So mixing and the ability for fans and players to be creators, right? Even if they're not musical creators, they can be collectible creators in a way that crafting allows them to be that we couldn't before. So that was like a really, really big thing. Now we're kind of facing this challenge of like, oh my God, we've got all these ideas, but like building those crafting recipes and the rewards and the dynamics and like the discoverability, that's like another thing we have to do. I feel like there's this mental image I have sometimes of Record Shop. It's like a juggler juggling, and there's another ball, and there's another ball, and there's another ball, and there's another ball. And like we just got another ball, and we're trying to put the right amount of focus on all the things. But so mixing came out, and I don't know. You guys were both pretty involved in that. Like, how do you think that went?
It's really fun, and I have to admit, I'm like really excited for some of the new combos that we have that are going to be coming out soon. But when you're talking about like opening it up and giving players the chance to be creators, like I'm trying to like even think of how to half do that programmatically, and it's like blowing my mind that people can take 2 cards and then make something that we didn't plan. That's
Listen, don't stress about it, but we've got some.
I won't stress about it. I don't develop things, so it's just blowing my mind a little.
I'm stressed about it.
Stress is something we all have to deal with in our lives, but hopefully we can find some kind of guru or guidance that will help us get past the parts that like push you down. But we do have something coming down the pike that is a little more kind of open-ended, as you're describing. I'm not going to talk about it yet, and it's not. It's probably not going to come for a little while. We need to do some internal testing first, but I think it will truly represent like unique and creation on the part of players in a way that's totally just unprecedented and unique and super freaking awesome. So that's something that I'm really excited about, but I don't want to talk about it too much if I can't talk about it. It's just freaking mean. So we'll move on from that topic. We did a bunch of other stuff.
To be moving on.
I think yeah, okay. Is there? I need to get better at the streaming game. I see the private chat. I need to go find our Twitch channel somewhere so I can see the public chat. Hold on one sec.
Oh yeah, there's nothing like having like 5 windows open that you all need, or you need all of while you're doing a live stream.
Yeah, some of my friends are just getting these like crazy like Stream Deck setups and all this stuff, and nice. And that's just like, okay, let's mute that. Cool, we're in Record Shop now, and let me get over here. Yeah, we're talking. Here we go. Okay, cool.
Well, we do have a question from the Nine Breaker, one of
Oh
our
yeah, it's a good one.
friends. He said,
Cool.
they said, I think that mixing was great. I can actually bring it up right on the screen.
Yeah, that'd
I
be
guess
great.
the question is regarding Pristine Potty. Why did we want to craft that? We did get some nuggets, but nothing official.
All right, so I'm gonna spill some tea on the backstory on that one. Initially, we were not going to launch with Pristine Potty because Obi has a really interesting use case in mind, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, people have like speculated and correctly guessed, although I don't think anybody told them that that was correct on public channels. So if y'all really want to sleuth it out, like go and read what people said about it. And there is a correct guess in there somewhere. But we weren't going to start with that one because that utility isn't ready. And we were kind of looking at some of our other options to launch with. And the thing that Pristine Potty does for us that I thought was a really important first mixing recipe to come out with is it's fairly straightforward as far as learnability goes. Like it tells a pretty clean story about like here's what you start with, here's what you add to it, here's what you end with. And even though it would have been great if we could have like shipped the utility in the moment, and that's why we debated it internally. Ultimately, we felt it was better to let people start with something that A, was like learnable and understandable conceptually, B, the cost of those cards is relatively low, so we want to make it something that's accessible, and that even if you're not fully, you're like, hey, what is this thing? If you have to spend, $40 to find out, you're like, if you have to spend $4 to find out, you're like, okay, I'll mess around a little and see where this gets me. So um, there's also a contingent who's like, guys, this is like goofy, like second grade humor. Why are we talking about potties? Like, what the F? The ship kind of sailed, right? We already had the porta party card out there. And for what it's worth, we were sitting on Lara's beautiful art for a really long time. So I'm always happy to ship Lara product. Like she does beautiful, beautiful work. I think everybody's seeing that on some of the new pack designs that are coming out.
Some new
So
packs
that
are so
was
insane.
they
They're
are
so
bananas.
good.
I feel like for a while we've just been like racing to kind of keep up and like everything is so new and now we kind of like we got our groove a little bit and it's letting people like Lara just be like, all right guys, check this out. She like rolls up her sleeves and we're doing these. So I'm super happy to be there. But that's a good segue to another thing that launched since the last time we spoke, which is the rare tracks packs, right? So we at the very dawn of time, some of you may know that we did like a series of pricing experiments where we put up like a Shopify page somewhere and it was like a common pack and a rare pack and a legendary pack, and a handful of people bought them, and we kind of used that experience to shape our ideas about prices and mint count, blah blah blah. But so for a long time, I mean, in the original roadmap, we're like, yeah, we're going to ship rare packs. We never really. It took us a while to figure out like what exactly rare meant. Is it the same as scarce? No. And like how do you map like exclusive content to rareness? Like we had, I think I might have told the story here before, but we had artists who were like, hey guys, like go like figure out what our preliminary conversations, like figure out what you think you guys want to issue as record shop collectibles, because it's new for artists, right? They know how to package things up as like EPs or LPs or singles, but this is a new way of thinking about it, right? It's almost as if you go to them and you're like, hey, make a box set, and you have to step back and look at your career and look at your work and think about how do you want to do it. So they go away for a weekend, they drink a bottle of wine, they come back, and they're like, you guys won't believe what happened. When we were kind of like brainstorming and digging through the crates, we found it. We found like the original demo that like launched this whole career. And like, oh my freaking God. And fans of this artist, when we ship that, are going to lose their mind. This is a really special collectible. But we can't have every card be that way, right? So we got to figure out the balance of like, is that legendary? Is that mythical? Is that like, how do we kind of gate those ranges? Nick Imps, no worries that you're late. Welcome here. Sorry, I got the chat working now, so I'm excited about it. Yeah, so we're kind of figuring out what rare means, and rare tracks became this opportunity for us to kind of spin the model a little bit. We saw, we're in such a funny place, I think, as a business, because NFTs have been so hot for the last year or so, and we're very actively like walking into the middle of this like shower of money and just being like, fuck you guys, here's an umbrella. Like we want to protect what's important about it and not get carried away with the fad and the trendiness, because a lot of it is BS and rug pulls and crap content. Like that's not what we're here for. We're here for the long game. But we looked around and we saw some of the other music models, and we've very intentionally kept this very low price point to make this thing accessible and try to, figure out for artists and for fans, like, what does this mean? So Rare Tracks became this great opportunity for us to experiment with a different kind of product model and pricing model, experiment with a different price point, and start to give artists the opportunity to say, like, hey, what do you show us some of your really, really hot stuff? Like, what do you got? We saw that today, right? With this, there's a Berger track where people, I think Obi was like, what? I didn't even know this was in here. This is amazing. And
There's
we've
a 10-minute
really got
visual
some
video in there. It's so cool. Just like awesome visuals that go along with the track.
Yeah. We've always had this idea, and I don't think we've cracked it yet, that like one of the ways that record shop collectibles are kind of tuned better than a traditional, like you listen to Spotify, it's the same thing as a CD or like a freaking carousel of CDs put on shuffle or put on program. Like, what's different about the music listening experience? And I think that some of the audiovisual stuff and the multimedia stuff and the opportunities within collectibles, even extending to games, that we can do, like, for not just like I'm listening to music or I'm going to the gym, but like house parties and like more kind of experiential modes of listening to music. I know Scumfrog, for instance, was like really intent on the idea that he made this movie. It's freaking awesome, and he wants people to have house parties and play that on the wall. And for that, I used to throw these parties in college, right? We used to like go to the library, get all the old like film, and run it silent. We had all these projectors; they would catch on fire sometimes. It was a whole thing.
Whoa, that sounds like a story we need to bring to the next one.
It was like cellulose, man. It was like old school film because nobody cared about this stuff, right? So we just pull it and we just be throwing visuals on the walls, right? We were just looking for something interesting and like tonally appropriate. We didn't know what the hell it was. It was like driver's education films from the 50s and like wildlife documentary. But like you get a room full of like different wildlife documentaries going on. You've done this stuff, and that's the visuals, and then the audio, and all those things kind of like come together. And so I think some of these Rare Track collectibles are demonstrating like what it looks like when we really get to put together some of the higher quality and more exclusive videos and audio and stuff like that. So we did that. We dropped public player profiles. So this is kind of exciting. It's on the more minimal side. I mean, a lot of the people in this company, I think it's fair to say that the strong opinion and philosophy of Record Shop is this kind of lean startup influenced, like ship early, ship often. So we'll often ship something to market long before it's what we would consider feature complete. But as long as it's providing some value for the user, even if it's kind of minimal value, we want to get it out there. We want to bang on it. We want people to, we may change course in how we're building it based on what we're learning and the feedback that we're getting, maybe change prioritization. But so public player profiles are the beginning of us being able to really embrace the fact that like music fandom tends to be, if not public, at least social. And so for the first time, here's a place where you can just give anybody on the street a URL and they can see your stuff. And right now they only see the for sale stuff just because from a development point of view, that was already at hand and something people kind of wanted. But in the future, you can imagine there's a lot of other really interesting utility there. And if you think, I think the last time I was here, I talked a little bit about like when I was in high school, music fandom, like you'd look at a kid's like backpack and they'd have these pins for like Dead Kennedys and the Misfits, right? And you are demonstrating and you're projecting for other people what your musical identity is. Maybe it's not your only musical identity. Maybe you also, grew up listening to country music. You probably don't have those pins next to the Dead Kennedys pins, but we can code switch that way. Okay. But something public, right? And so this public profile page is the beginning of that. Also, from a practical point of view, obviously being able to share and just like have a link that you can tweet out, like, yo, check out my stuff, becomes more interesting. So look for, now that the initial groundwork has been done, look for more to come that way. We're also currently, I might be dropping a little bit of a nugget here. Currently, the URL is just like a hashy stream of just like robot vomit. So one might imagine that it could be attractive to be able to like customize your own handle
Mm.
and be able to say like recordshop.com/redbird to, go to Lisa's stuff. The problem that we need to solve is what if Chris claims recordshop.com/redbird first?
Pay up.
So
You gotta pay up.
yeah.
No one, when that comes out, if somebody claims Redbird, I'm coming after you.
Well,
Like,
I know I was wondering like
Nick
what's
Imps is on it.
I was wondering like from a software and product perspective how we're going to do it, but maybe we just stick Redbird on you if he misbehaves, and
There you go.
everybody's just gonna she'll be the enforcement unit too.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've got some some work to do in that department, but that also kind of starts lending itself towards some feeling of like identity, right? Like your record shop handle and your record shop site become a place. We always talked a lot about flexing as this like critical. Ninebreaker saying you can
Ninebreaker,
reserve a
stop
bunch of
giving people
names.
ideas.
Well, no, listen, man, get it all out in the open and pressure test this stuff in real life, right? And we'll figure it out. This is not a new problem. Other people have faced it. We just need to strike the right balance between, a blacklist for certain names, and then like the tricky thing starts to become like, what if you've got one Discord handle and another Twitter handle, and then you're registered, because we can't just go default to we don't really have a record shop username, right? It's like some people use their email and it's their government name and they don't want that public. So we need to do just a little bit of work to figure out kind of what's the minimum okay thing that we can ship. So it's one of those things that sounds simple, but it turns out there's a lot of meaningful edge cases. So, we're working on that, and we'll get that out there. But it's the beginning, not the beginning. It's a really important step in Record Shop as a flexing platform. And as we kind of go along this road more and more and spend more and more time with artists and their fan communities, and kind of a lot of people, like they looked at us the first time, they're like, yeah, cool, adios. And other people came and they stayed. What we're seeing and what we're looking towards is the artists and the fan communities recognizing that we are doing this better than anybody else and we care more than anybody else. And that is the reason why a year from now, Record Shop is going to be such a dense and intricate ecosystem with the software features and the way the community interacts, blah, blah, blah. Like, this is where you want to be. And that kind of thing, like all of a sudden personal reputation and my flexing, my handle, like that's super, super critical. I worked on a program on a project a couple of years ago that was for music fans. And one of the things it was kind of like, imagine like LinkedIn for fish. Right. So it's like, it turns out that like Facebook and LinkedIn are the same software, right? It's a social network, but everybody has both because they do different things. It's code switching. They're different parts of your persona. So on Facebook, it's your social network, and on LinkedIn, it's your professional network. And for fish fans, it's like, well, I don't care what your name is. I just care, were you at all the shows in 1997? Like, can you tell me what the third encore for blah, blah, blah was? And you'd have these people in the community that have like crazy karma because of nothing other than like their cred and their experience in the community. So these different needs, like I think, are the kinds of things that we're hewing around and starting to come to.
Yeah. Well, you've been talking about identity, and like music plays such a big part of everyone's identity. Like, I don't know anyone like, and I think of like all my close friends, I know exactly what artists are their favorite. Whereas, like, I don't know what TV shows they watch. There's other things that I just don't know about them necessarily compared to music. It's just such a big part of everything we do. And, like, it's just really interesting where we can go with that. And, like, you're talking about the pins. And, like, I think about those people who, they make their own stuff. They make their own pins. They don't even just buy the pins that match, or they make a T-shirt because that's what they're wearing to the concert. Like, it's just... There's so many routes we can go down. I'm so excited.
Yeah, totally. And it's such a deep part. Like, I think that creation part of it is such a key part of a lot of music communities and fandoms. And like, we're sitting squarely in the middle of rave culture, right? You're making me think of Candy, right? And people put all these bracelets on, and they make they spend time, and they're doing, and it becomes this really like market appropriate, and I'm using the term market in a kind of weird way, but market appropriate expression, right? Because you go to a rave and you're trading candy with people, and there's certain like cultural norms around it, right? You would never really sell it, right? It's kind of meaningless if you sell it, but it becomes a way to connect with people and to commune with people, and that kind of communion I think is really the heart of what Record Shop is about, and bring that to the 21st century and using Web3 and digital technologies as opposed to like chintzy plastic beads, which are also wonderful in their own way. That's kind of what we're here to do. So it feels very true to that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to keep going down my list because we shipped. I was on vacation. We shipped all this stuff, and I went on vacation. So
I didn't even know we shipped this stuff.
So we did a bunch on kind of enriching tracks. So we're now kind of telling you, we call it locked content in the card. This could all loosely be categorized as like try before you buy, right? And track previews, which are really critical because we've always had this weird kind of like dual personality thing of like, are we a collectible site first or are we a music site first? And whichever way you land on that, or whichever way you land on it at a particular moment, from the music point of view, when you look at kind of the mainstream successful music sites and UI paradigms and whatever, being able to listen, being able to preview kind of before you buy is really critical. And it makes sense. Like, I think there is a little bit of, I have a little bit of nostalgia for like the days where like you buy CDs and you're kind of like, oh man, do I spend $20 on this? I know there's like 2 bangers on this disc I really love, but like, are there, and most of the time the answer is nah, the rest of the album's crap. And every once in a while you're like, oh my God, I had no idea. This entire album front to back is just phenomenal, and I never would have known if I hadn't just kind of like blindly bought the thing. But that little bit of nostalgia aside, like, it's nice that we can preview. So we added that. What else? Oh, big one, which I know Chris is super happy about, and I think you've already announced today, but we have been listening to a lot of what the community's had to say about the withdrawals process, and we've also taken our lawyers to a small room and started punching them repeatedly in the head. And consequently,
we fixed it.
It fixes everything.
It's because you sicked me on the lawyers.
Yes,
it's what Shakespeare said, man, kill all the lawyers. But so we no longer are requiring a lot of tax information and a bunch of the paperwork that had just made the withdrawals process slower and more aggravating than it needed to be. So I think that's a big win. And we've also added a few payment methods. Yay!
I think we gotta celebrate that one more.
Yeah. Less paperwork is always a cause for celebration.
Less paperwork is good.
Yeah, and so we added Ach and Wire Transfers. So we are, from the beginning, we've always regarded withdrawals as really critical to kind of our integrity. And the obviously we hoped it would ship earlier than it did, and we're really excited that it's out in the world now. And the question like when withdrawals kind of turned into a little bit of a joke. But withdrawals is here, and I'm really proud that we shipped it. I'm proud that we continue to iterate on it. Like, honestly, we could do a lot less work on it, I think, and still be doing our due diligence. But we know the community cares about it, and we want to kind of do right by it and stand up for it. So we've continued to put some energy into withdrawals. And we will continue to do so. Like, we've got other fish to fry and obviously a ton of other stuff that we want to build. But I think it's fair to say that we will continue to put attention on withdrawals until we feel that we've, if not perfected the process, like gotten it to a place where we can't reasonably make it any smoother or better. So I see Greyhound77 saying artist pages with their sets and perks and upcoming drops. Okay, dude, you're jumping ahead because
should we hold? Let's pause on that one
lately?
because we also missed Phileas asked a question too. I think that was about the public player profiles. Let me bring it up. I'm curious if this would include an integration with a third party like Moment Ranks.
Yep. We have been talking to Moment Ranks. We're super excited to get on that platform. I think it's really critical, kind of coming from the NFT side of it, to just be on the board and in the community in the way that people expect it to be. So if anybody knows anybody at Moment Ranks, please give me their number or help agitate and tweet at them publicly. I know that they're swamped under a lot of stuff.
They've reached out to us a couple times, and originally I think the hangup was their flow integration. They had very limited flow integration with Top Shot, but that should be resolved. And I'll reach back out on that too, because I actually sent them a message last week. So we'll keep pushing on Moment Ranks. They were excited to get something done. They just technically couldn't do it yet. So we'll work on that, Phileas.
And I think that's that's a fairly familiar story for us, and I think and just everybody who's on the
Right.
cutting edge of technology, right? It's just like you want to do it, everybody, it's a good idea, like conceptually it all works, but oh man, there's a bunch of plumbing we still need to build. Hey, are you guys done with your side of the plumbing? Oh, we got some more we got to do. So we're a little stuck on one of those, but it's definitely in the cards. Um, and I also think like to pull back a little, the more of those like third party integrations we have, the more kind of I believe sunlight is the best disinfectant, right? And I want us to be as open as possible everywhere. So the more you have those like kind of third party sites letting you introspect on what's going on, and making it easy, right? Everything's on the blockchain, so technically you can do it, but not everybody can or has the time to do it. As we get integrated with more and more of the ecosystem that's growing, the better it is for everybody. So we're excited about that stuff.
Love it. And Greyhound, we're getting to your question there. Promise.
Cool. So I've got my little like show note situation, and I'm looking at. So that kind of concludes the what we've been doing section, and now we've got the kind of what we're doing now, which this is an incomplete list necessarily because some stuff is like embargoed, undercover, skunk works, top secret, double cross your heart, hope to die kind of stuff. But there's a bunch of stuff that we've talked about publicly. First of which is Dapper Wallet. So we're hard at work at a Dapper Wallet integration, whoop, whoop. And so that's coming along. It's a fairly big hill to climb technically. In some cases because of the raw technical of it, in other cases just because, as we were saying a minute ago, when you're in an ecosystem that's this new, it's like we've got that part built out and they've got this part built out. And just kind of like sometimes you just got to deal with some timing, latency and efficiencies. But we're putting a lot of energy into that, and we're really looking forward to getting that going. I'm not foolish enough to offer time estimates, but I will promise that as we get more visibility into time estimates, I will come back and report them. The other option is I could just say, weeks, not months, or something like that. But that joke's kind of tired and old, so I'm going to let it go.
Let's not do that.
Yeah, well, or we just do it all the time. Weeks, not months for everybody. Like, look under your chair. You get a week, not exactly.
Should we just change it to months, not years, maybe?
Yeah.
Years, not centuries. Hey, man, time is a flat circle. It's one of those. But so we're hard at work on that. Similarly, kind of like deep in the caves of the elves who do all the deep, back end stuff. We're spending a fair amount of time on performance and some associated UX tuning. This is, an ongoing concern. I think there's always going to be kind of an ebb and flow of how much time do you spend on new feature development and how much time do you spend on kind of short. So right now we are in a season of some of the new stuff that we've added incurred some performance hits, and anybody who's familiar with software development is probably familiar with refactoring, right? And the idea that you're sometimes, the definition of refactoring is changing the implementation without changing the outcome, right? So just making it a lot more elegant and fast on the back end. So this is like a heavy refactoring season for us in a bunch of ways. So we've got some dev resources kind of turned towards that. We're also, and this is, I'm going to mention this and then double back to it because I know Lisa is excited about kind of getting into this a little bit. So we're also starting to look at a homepage revamp. We've kind of tuned and tweaked the homepage in the past. We recently just kind of like took a lot of what was formerly known as the drops page and are treating that as our homepage. But the truth is that the homepage designs really date back from when we were pre-launch and in stealth. And we don't believe they're doing as good a job as they could on answering the question like, what is this thing? And like, what should I do here? So we're taking a real eye towards making the homepage, and more specifically the landing page, right? Because like once upon a time, and this might be another nugget, a logged in user probably wants to see a different thing than a guest, right? A logged in user, their homepage probably wants to be more of a dashboard that lets them like build showcases and see their activity feed and their experience points and all that cool stuff. Whereas a logged in user has a different set of concerns, or sorry, a guest has a different set of concerns, right? They want to learn about like, hey, somebody told me about this, or this artist I love is on Record Shop, but what is this thing and what am I doing and why do I need to do it? So that is, that's kind of coming, and that's a place where, well, Lisa, do you want to jump in on that for a minute, or should I keep rolling?
Yeah, I mean, like I think one thing that we really pride ourselves on is listening to our community. Like I think we all acknowledge that like we're all pretty smart here, but we're not the smartest people in the world, and we've got this community who love to give us feedback and want to help us improve. So like why wouldn't we leverage that? So today we're looking at that homepage and open to suggestions. I can see some people typing in Discord after I popped it there, but maybe Greyhound will come back here. Because yeah, we're just looking for some thoughts, ideas.
Yeah, I would also say that like anytime if anybody in the community has like tried to show record shop to somebody and they've encountered any like, oh my god, this totally explained it for them, or oh my god, they were totally confused, those are really really helpful stories for us because that helps us identify. I mean, it's anecdata, right? It's not scientific, but it can be really really powerful way to kind of see where the rough edges are that we need to sand down. So if anybody's ever had a like, oh, you know, it'd be really cool, they should really put an explainer about NFTs in this part of blah blah, that kind of thing, we are all ears. And what did we say? The suggestions channel on Discord. It's
Yeah.
good to put that stuff. But yeah, we'd very much value and appreciate any feedback or any wish lists for a upcoming homepage revamp. And I kind of thought of that because Greyhound 77 was asking about artist pages, and I think the artist pages are kind of part and parcel with that, right? It's like it's not so much about new, mixing functionality or stuff like that. It's about like we're a music site, and like how do we make that clear to people, and how do we showcase the things that people expect to find on music sites? So artist pages, one of the things that we've always looked at is we're a way for artists. We believe like the premise of Record Shop is that in 2022 it's really hard to make a living as a recorded artist, and we want to change that. We want to make that easier and better. So right now drops are the only way for artists to kind of apply their wares. What would it look like if we had something more for them? So that's definitely something that we're digging into pretty deep, and stay tuned for that. We should have some things shortly.
Yeah, maybe we should talk a little bit about artist pages now, because we've had a couple comments now in the chat about that. And I think when I think about an artist page and when an artist is sharing their URL that takes you to Record Shop, that is probably going to be the homepage for many people as their first entry into Record Shop. So
Totally.
I like seeing what people are saying, like Greyhound said, to see their sets, their perks, their upcoming drops. The Reed just saying, see their faces, their names, having a featured artist of the week.
Yeah, no, all that stuff is super interesting, and it kind of becomes this thing of like, as an artist, where is your digital identity? Like, where do you live? Like, are we going to become the white label landing page for a given artist? Probably not for all artists. Are there artists for whom that makes sense? Maybe. But as I was saying earlier, we develop incrementally, right? So we'll start with just having a URL that's about that artist, and it shows kind of what they've got on the Record Shop platform, and then the stuff that Greyhound's suggesting with like ancillary information, like upcoming drops, tour dates, all that stuff. Like, absolutely, we've done kind of like little prototypes of things like that for Scumfrog and the Fat Rat, and those were kind of one-offs and like our kind of exploratory process. This is getting to be more like, how do we scale it, and how do we do it for all the artists on Record Shop, or for all the artists for whom it makes sense on Record Shop? And there's going to be a delta, right, between some artists who everything they've ever recorded is here, and others for whom they're like, when you talk about some of these iconic artists that we're signing to the platform that have like 30-year careers, I don't know if Record Shop is the right place for all this stuff, or maybe it is, right? Because maybe Record Shop is the right place for that kind of like career spanning retrospective. Like, I can't remember which of the artists are public, so I'm being cagey about who I'm talking about. But feel free to shout one out if you can think of one, or just grin slyly as I describe it. But like, you can think about some of these folks who've had like 30-year careers. Like, what does it look like to offer a new way to listen to their music? Like, imagine an artist gets a a retrospective at a museum, and imagine we kind of box that up as a digital collectible. Like, that's a pretty good use case for Record Shop, right? That makes a lot more sense than like a Spotify channel or something like that. So there's a lot of potential for that, and artist pages I think are interesting because they start opening the door to all of those different possibilities. And we've focused a lot on the players and the fans, but artist pages are really the beginning of letting the artists come in and use Record Shop as a medium and a tool, maybe for their artistic expression, but really for the kind of platform of their main art, of their music, of the other stuff they produce.
Yeah, that's super exciting for me. I mean, that's one thing I kind of like about the way I know our current player profile is like very, minimum product, but it kind of lets the users have their own little shop, and like just imagining that as like for artists, and in addition to users, like you can have curated shops versus like a brand specific shop. It's just kind of a really cool approach, I think, to sharing music. And I don't know, I just for some reason thought about when you just said there about someone releasing their back catalog and like doing a retrospective, like kind of like a deluxe like box edition of something, and like a pack drop being like just that is pretty exciting. Like it could be maybe a mixed bag, or maybe you already know what's in it, right? Like like a real box set would be. I think that would be comes with 10 cards, like a really proper like super deluxe album where each track is like this deluxe story. I think that's a really fun idea.
I think that would be super good. I love what you're saying, and I'm just riffing now, and I'm thinking about like, what if Record Shop were a museum? Like some kind of rock and roll Hall of Fame, or like a museum targeted around music and musicians. And what if, one of these, I don't even know what to call it. I guess a set would be kind of like an exhibit. And what if the drop was like the opening party for the exhibit, right? And it's that kind of moment where everybody's come together and you get to see it for the first time, and not just the individual bits, but what it feels like cohesively as a whole, and it's kind of like in time and all that stuff. And I think it's exciting because like museums, I think hardest and the most about like, how do we find new ways for people to interact with art that they love, and that's what we're doing, right? So I guess we need to get some exhibition designers on staff, or start kind of talking and thinking in those ways. But I think it's really meaningful and interesting.
I love
that.
Cool. So there's how's this for an abrupt segue? So there's one other thing left on the list of kind of what we're starting to work on, which I think a lot of people will be excited about, and that is gifting. So no targets for when it's going to ship yet, but it's something that we've known for a long time. It's been asked for, and we see people kind of figuring out, or at pains to figure out how to do it. We've had various airdrops and stuff like that, and contests where our team has done the manual labor to kind of like artificially do gifting, but just starting to let people gift each other things. There's obviously some design issues there. How do you prevent side markets and stuff like that? But we think we've got it mostly figured out, and so we're embarking on building that out. So that's a pretty exciting development.
Nice. Yeah, I know a lot of users are asking for that regularly. I think that'll also help with like new user growth, right? Like, hey, like I've got this really cool card I know you love, like here you go. And then like, oh, what is this card? How do I experience it? What is Record Shop all about? I think that'll give us a nice new discovery path for new users.
Totally. And like hopefully previews addresses some of that, but I think there's also like an ownership element to it, right? There's kind of that thing, like whenever I'm trying to hire friends, whenever I'm trying to really introduce Record Shop to somebody, I always say like, I would give you a couple bucks if I could, but it's not going to work if I give you a couple bucks. Do me a favor, spend a few dollars of your own money, and I swear to God, it's weird, and I don't know totally why it makes sense, but it's different. And it's the difference between like knowing of and knowing that. And you just start you start looking at it and you're like, what's going to happen now? Like you care about it in a different way because you got a little skin in the game. And I think gifting is a way to like grease the skids on that a little bit in a nice way.
I love it. I'm really excited. I was one of those users who did like an under the table swap with someone where we just listed, both of us had a card that the other wanted. We just listed it really low at a really quiet time. And we're like, hopefully nobody gets it. Like, okay, you can go now.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited for gifting.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a little bit of like thrill of the chase in that one too, and as like you live on the danger. But it will be nice to elect to live on that danger instead of to be like, oh my God, somebody sniped it. What's going on?
Yeah, we were lucky that nobody else sniped it, but because they were glitch cards. They were
Oh,
good cards.
nice.
Ooh,
Hmm.
I
Trading
don't know. You
glitches.
held glitch.
Oh yeah, I
Ready?
got a couple.
Oh, I don't know. I don't have any. I ain't got no glitch.
Not as many as TGF, but
Well, I mean,
Well,
says it in the
father.
name, right?
Yep.
yeah, yeah. All right, I want to go back through some of these comments because we're getting some good feedback on artist pages and home pages. So let me just go
Hit me.
through and Greyhound says he likes the difference between the new user homepage and existing user homepage. We talked about the featured artist. Oh, Nick Imp says it would be neat to see weekly most popular collectibles or something along those lines, because it's always nice to see something, the trends when you go into something new.
All right, so I'm not really allowed to talk about this, but hypothetically speaking, and any of you I don't remember which channel it is. I think it's OGAF. I think Obi already started like he didn't drop a nugget. He like gently like whatever the smaller version of it, like little nugget shavings are starting to drop down to
It's more of a potato chip.
Okay.
potato chip. All right. But what what Nick Imp is describing, you know, weekly most popular collectibles, we've always like the original vision of Record Shop is this fairly like large, complicated machine, and so far we've built like a handful of pieces, but the battle station is not yet fully operational. Like we don't have all the pieces. There's a major missing one. Which kind of speaks to that idea of weekly most popular and kind of how do we close the loop between fans and artists, because right now we've got like fans are giving money and artists are giving their art, um, but there's no way for the fan to truly kind of be a patron of the artist. And you see a lot of other NFT music plays, things like Royal, like they're hewing onto this royalty model, which is based on, you know, the 20th century. And like anybody who is within 1,000 feet of music knows that the royalty system is pretty messed up. But it's what we got, so it's what we've been going with, and you know, it's what kind of made the leap into the digital era, and blah 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 blah. And it's indeed what's kind of causing a lot of the problems with things like all you can eat streaming, meaning that like only, you know, Dua Lipa gets paid and everybody, you know, all the kind of medium-sized artists don't. So I don't think royalties are the right way to do it, right? Like once upon a time, David Bowie sold futures against his earnings, and that was really cool and innovative and like opened up the era of securitizing music futures. But that was David Bowie. Like that doesn't work for most people. And at the end of the day, he's already freaking rich, but he didn't make any more money. He just got an advance on the money that he and his estate, you know, did and will continue to make. So is there a different way to do it, right? Is there a way for fans not just to take a part of the pie that belongs to the artist and just like get it earlier in time, which is what royalties are effectively, but to actually increase the size of the pie, right? Or create opportunities for kind of co-collaboration or co-earning or co-rewards between artists and fans. And you can see it like in the 20th century, you know, look at the Grateful Dead and Fish, which is an example. It's funny because it's an example I keep going to because I think there's really interesting kind of cultural stuff that happened there. But it's not just the music of the Grateful Dead, right? It's this entire enormous culture and economy that grew up around it. And that is something that the fans gave to the band and gave to each other in a way that the band, they couldn't have done it without the band. And the band did its best to support it by doing things like allowing taping for free and stuff like that. But there's 1,000 other bands that wish they could do it, and the band can't do it. Right, the community needs to do it. The community needs to come together, and when they do, and when they do it in the right way, it's a bigger pie for everybody. Right, the Grateful Dead ended up with way more money and way more successful than many, many, many of their peers who were, let's just argue, like musically the same. Like everything was the same, but what was different was that community and that like really healthy feedback loop between the fans and the band. And that is something that we believe we can. More than we believe, we believe we can build. We believe it is kind of the core of what Record Shop can offer that existing platforms don't. What makes us different? What makes us special? And what makes us, the best place for artists and fan communities. I'll stop talking because I'm getting into pitch mode, but I'm obviously I'm excited about it.
Yeah, you're like I'm almost speechless. I'm just like thinking this all through and where it can go. It's like it's insane. It's hard. Like it's almost impossible to wrap your head around.
That's the exciting part about it, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's all totally new, and we get to build it. Like not just we, the record shop team, but the record shop, players and fan base and artists. Like this is something truly new, and I think it's hard to see it when you're in it. And then a few years later, you look back and you're like, oh my God, we were there. And like that, and there's something really special about that.
Yeah. Well, even like just this week, as we were releasing the Kaiser Soze remix competition, I'm like, I don't think this has ever been done before. That you're buying an NFT to get the stems, you're gonna remix the song, he's gonna pick a winner, and then you're gonna be released as an NFT. Like that's never fucking happened before.
Yeah,
And like we kind of forgot to market that like that's so cool because we're just like, oh my God, like okay, we're just doing that, but this is literally the first time I've ever heard of it.
Oh, it's freaking amazing. And it's the thing that I love about, like you and I were talking about this before the show started. I come from a time where music is something that professionals do. Like I grew up thinking that. I grew up like Britney Spears does me. Like music is for us, and I listen to music, but I don't get to make music. I took piano lessons as a kid and stuff like that. And we were talking about the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, where if anybody's seen it, like music is a really, it's not too much to say that music is like a character in that movie, and it's just such a fundamental part of that movie. But it's the story of the Odyssey set in kind of like Depression era America, and it's a bunch of prison escapees who play the part of Odysseus, and like they're going on this big journey to get home, and they're prison escapees. So they need some money, and but there's music through the whole thing. And at some point, George Clooney, he plays the lead, he just goes, "Hey y'all, there's some feller down the road who's going to pay you $5 to sing into a tin can." And it was like the first time any of them had seen recorded music, and they went to this little shack and they like record this song, and a lot of the movie's plot kind of hinges on that. But the only way that scene and setup makes sense is if everybody takes for granted that music is something everyone does, just like eating or walking or breathe. It's just part of everyday life. And I think we lost that in the 20th century with the recorded music establishment and all that. And I think what's so exciting about the NFT remix contest is that it's starting to lower the barrier to let people back in. Like they're going to be like somebody said on I saw something in Discord like, oh no, we're up against professionals. I guarantee you there's at least one person who like hasn't really messed around with Ableton before, or even GarageBand, but they're like, you know what? Let me give this a shot. And it's going to be the first time that they like take a bunch of stems and put something together and go, I mean, maybe they'll be like, that was a waste of my time. Or maybe they'll be like, this is cool. And what can I do next time? And what can I do next time? And what can I do next time? And you start to, this is why I hate that I keep talking about jam bands. So why people brought the parking lot of a Fish show, right? It's like nobody's mistaking you for the guys on stage, but you get to play music with your friends and strangers, but with your musical community and your fan community, and that I think is where the love and the value and the really exciting stuff is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what you're saying, like, oh, music is only for the musicians. And I think we forget often how creative we all are in our regular life. Like the number of times I will sing a song, but then change the lyrics and like make fun of my dog. Like that's creative and it's stupid, but it brings me a ton of joy, right? So like,
fun, right? That's the point. What's the point of music if not joy, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think we shouldn't, like all of us, and we have some who are more talented than myself, but like can't take it for granted, and you'll never know unless you try, right? Like
I mean, I can speak from experience. Like for me, like this is why I'm really excited we're hosting not just a remix contest, but like one that's this exciting. Like the first track I ever finished was from a remix contest. Until then I had like made music and like learned how to like dabble on the piano, but like I never finished a track. But I had a deadline, I had stems, it was an artist I really looked up to. It was like, I've got to get this done, and I didn't win, but that was like a crucial next step, is learning how do I finish a song when I have a deadline. And I don't know, like from that point forward, I felt like a much more capable producer from that one big push. And I'm really excited to see that there's other people in our community already thinking of making that leap and pushing for it.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, want to hop back over. Greyhound left a comment earlier. Lots of people discover music via playlists and check out the artists they like. So being able to look up to an artist or label and see all their stuff is probably more intuitive than discovering music via random collectibles or sets, especially if artists are the main way to onboard new users. That's what the rest of us says.
Totally agree. And I think it's a whole kind of user experience that has been lagging and lacking. But you're absolutely right. Like only having random as the way to do it is like pretty weird. And you'd never. Random is nice. It's a little bit of spice, but you'd never expect somebody to like come to love baseball only by collecting baseball cards in random packs and never having the opportunity to like see a game or a league or a team, or play and follow them that way. So like, yes, it's missing and it's been missing. So we're excited to kind of be able to bring that back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about it, and I think it might be kind of weird to have artist profiles. Maybe not so much now, but like at first, right? Like Solarstone has 3 cards in the set. Like, come check it out, So I think it'll be really nice as we get more and more content from our providers, and they're able to self-serve themselves a little bit. It kind of goes back to like we're talking about with artist profiles. I think there's a lot that we can do there. I know that you and the team have been thinking a lot about it too.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about, like, I don't know if this is a nugget or not, when you go to a show and there's a merch table, right? And it's like, what's at that merch table? Well, there's a bunch of stuff you could go to the record store and buy. And then there's a bunch of like weird t-shirts that they just had this like funny idea, and they printed up 200 of them and that's it. And there's like this LP that you can't find anywhere, and a bunch of, like, you get the artist as merchant and the artist like putting up a little storefront. And so far, the only thing that we've offered people is, aside from the secondary market, is these packs, right? These baseball card packs. And like, that's not a model you really find in music. Like maybe you go to a record store and they'll have like a brown paper bag wrapper, like random pack kind of thing, that they're using to clear out old stock. But like, spend $10 and get 5 records. It's not a main model for music distribution or packaging. And so it's kind of natural to think that we'll look to expand from just having that one model.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I'm really interested in from Greyhound's comment is the playlist. That's something I really want as a user. Personally,
Lisa's wish list with Jonathan.
Yeah.
Oh, no, this is the point of these streams.
Yeah, but there's that line about nobody ever wanted an electric drill. They just wanted a hole in the wall, right? Like I don't want a playlist. I just want to be able to listen to the stuff that I like the most. So we are looking at that. Playlists are definitely on the roadmap, as well as other ways to achieve the same functionality, primarily on our preeminent music listening platform.
Ooh.
Man, this is a good stream. I'm loving this.
Yeah, y'all are getting some good content. This is also some news for some of us on this stream.
Philly's realized we never answered your question about, well, more of a statement than question, but about the planets from Kaiser Soze. So that is really more of a set completion reward. And it's something we still have to figure out. It would be nice if we could have like a place for that to live, and you could see that, oh, this is a thing you can do. It didn't. The challenge we had planned was the remakes competition, so we didn't really. Yeah, it wasn't quite like a challenge, so that's a set completion more. But we wanted to communicate that so people would know that if you collected all the planets, then you could get the last planet, or is that what it is? It's the last planet from Kaiser Soze, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, this falls into that set completion rewards kind of category, which is something we definitely still have some work to do to figure out how do we communicate that? How do we let users know this is a thing that happened? This is a thing that will happen. When it will happen? What do you need? Yeah, it gets pretty complicated, but we're
I, I,
working on it.
I think it's
Yeah.
something that we're just kind of struggling with in general a little bit. Like there are a few different ways to like interact and get rewards, and figuring out like the freaking zoology of it all. It's like,
Mhm.
like, is it a challenge or is it not a challenge? Like what, and where do we put them? And I think we need to go down the road a little further and let these patterns emerge organically, and just kind of be like,
Mhm.
oh, you know what, this is what it means to be a challenge, which is different from a set recipe, which is different from a recipe, which is different from a set completion. And here's why. And
Mhm.
like at the end of the day, yeah, we should have one place that you can see this stuff, or have a way that the community self-administers that.
Mhm.
But it confuses me too.
Yeah, it's tough. And like this is a reward from the artist, right? Like this is from Kaiser Soze. He's like, hey, I wanted it for people who collected my cars in the past. Like I want to complete the set. I'm going to close it, and I want to give a reward for those who've been passionate collectors. Um, it feels weird to me calling that a challenge on top of putting
Yeah.
that on top of a challenge that we already have. So
Well,
I
maybe.
don't really know.
Sorry. Somebody's asking what is product before. Here's some product right now. Maybe what
Uh,
we've had so far are really record shop challenges, and this is a Kaiser challenge or Kaiser something. And maybe there's a way, just like taxonomically, to be like, yo, here's all the challenges versus here's the record shop house challenges. Because I know Disco Fries drop a lot of stuff. There's a bunch
Yeah.
of other artists that I'm neglecting to mention who do
yeah.
their own kind of airdrops.
Mhm.
So that kind of
Well, we're
becomes
definitely going to have to figure out a self-serve way that
For
we don't
sure.
need to be involved in every single thing that an artist wants to do, because they've got this amazing content that they want to get out to their fans, and they want to thank their fans, and then they're often roadblocked by us because we're like, oh, well, like, let us help you figure that out. And a lot of it is hand holding now and figuring out how do we do that? How do we build it in a way that we can automate it,
And
right?
what
Like,
makes sense, and like how can we alert their fans when they're doing this, and like it's a lot.
Nine Breaker saying maybe integrate it with the artist homepage, which I think is a good call. Less Chance Ranch is saying, what do we call it when the market opens and email goes out to everybody? Yeah, so like those kind of like notifications, and just this is something that's emerging and growing. And for things like that, of course, we need to strike a balance between, are we being too noisy and you're just like getting spammed, like nobody wants to get too much stuff. But I think Last Chance Ranch is absolutely right. Like we got to find the right channels to let the right people know at the right time.
You
I
can
see also Greyhound.
you can opt in and stuff. Sorry.
Sorry, I was gonna. I know we're running short on time, and Greyhound 77 had a question that I wanted to read and get into. So he says, they say, speaking of Grateful Dead and Fish, the fans buy everything and anything as far as merch goes. But does that kind of fan base exist in the EDM world? I think that's a really interesting point. I was talking to another team member who comes from hardcore, and like honestly isn't that well versed with EDM, and he's like, dude, it's the same freaking thing. This is what I grew up with. Like nobody really was into the lyrics of hardcore. Like who can understand? You go for the shows, you go for the community. Like that's what it's about. And Greyhound, I think you're right about that. It is kind of like a different dynamic for sure, certainly than jam bands, which are probably the other end of the spectrum in terms of like monolithic and very community oriented. I think one of the really interesting things about dance music, electronic music, is it feels like the most balkanized. It's like there's so many different subgenres, and God forbid you can confuse like psytrance with something else, and it can get so splintered. And honestly, we saw that kind of as a feature, not a bug, because it meant that we had this great test bed of all these different like mini communities to work with and figure out like how do you bridge them. One of the things that we always hear is like when D&B, which personally, like, yeah, when D&B, like I don't know, it's killing me that I don't know if we've announced these people, but like my like the freaking OG drum and bass like jungle artist we signed not too long ago, and I like the 19-year-old inside me is like and I like I can't wait. But it's like I don't know, I lost the thread there. But the question was like, just because the market exists in a certain way for jam bands, does that map to EDM? And I think that some of those social dynamics are a little different, but I'd argue, and I think last time I was on the show, I was talking about like everybody's got a bookshelf that has unread books on them. And that is not like only jam band fans or only nonfiction.
Mhm.
Everybody has that bookshelf. And the reason they do, aside from the ones they legitimately will get around to reading or never could throw out after they read it in college, because part of it is you projecting how you want to be regarded and how you think of yourself and how you want others to think of yourself. And I think that is universal around humans and social and music listening, and it's not specific to any one genre. So the kind of expression of it might be a little different by genre and things like that. But I would argue that there are, in Grateful Dead land, it might be like a freaking, I don't know, a grilled cheese warmer or something like that. And you would not find that in EDM land. In EDM land, it might be like freaking, I don't know, something to, a candy bracelet storage, right? There's going to be some idiosyncratic differences based on the culture, but still that concept, I think, is sound. We intend on finding out one way or the other.
We'll figure it out. There's an answer. I kind of wanted to go back to Ninebreaker's point too. Yeah, I know we're short on time, but just to answer that, talking about integrating it with the artist homepage. One thing that a lot of users don't see is all the work that goes into the back end of Record Shop, which will ultimately be artist facing and brand facing. Do you want to say maybe like a word or two about the development that's going on that back end in Lathe?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we've kind of intentionally stayed quiet about, which also kind of means that I'm not sure how much we're
Okay.
allowed to talk
It
about,
exists.
but I'll say a few things about it. Like, as we've been building out this platform, and again, we're not in it for a rug pull. This isn't like a quick cash grab. This is a long-term play to change the way the music industry works so that working artists can make a living. Full stop. And obviously, in order to do that, we need to build the tools for this for all artists because it's not going to scale. Like right now, the beginning, phase one, yes, we're doing a lot of that heavy lifting. But the analogy that I've used in the past is like kind of like you can imagine like Squarespace or Webflow or one of those companies who build software for other people to build websites. It's like you've got people who are going to self-serve. You've got agencies who design in Squarespace. And if you're a baker and you need a web page and you don't want to do it yourself, you hire one of these agencies. You're not hiring at a higher cost somebody who like builds websites from scratch. You hire somebody who's really good at Squarespace and can knock out a bakery site, with minimal pain. So all of that software like is not only been developed in an ongoing fashion for the last year, but is it's not super mature. We've been the team doing it, so we get to tell, we don't have to make it easy to learn. We can kind of figure out the hard corners ourselves and then just spend that energy building more functionality. But we are very far down the road in a way that I doubt anybody else is in building the tools for artists to be able to deliver their music. And when you think about music companies in the last 20, 30, 40 years, like in the 20th century, you saw music companies as being controlling music production and distribution. And if you wanted to like really record a legit album, you had to like book time at a very expensive studio, and the record company supported you in doing that. And laptops changed all that, right? The Pro Logic, DAWs, we do that all in software now. Cool. So we've democratized production, and then distribution we've democratized as well, right? It's not only the record industries with their physical supply chains that can, distribute vinyl LPs, but like you can pretty much just put something up on the internet and Bandcamp or freaking Beatport or one of those. But I would suggest that like the interfaces around the music production side are so developed and intricate, and like I got is. Do I have it with me? I don't have it with me. I got this like little MIDI guitar situation, so I've been screwing around with a bunch of soft synthesizers on iOS.
That's fine. I
And
love that.
it's kind of janky. I'll be honest. Like I
Oh
want it
yeah,
to be fun. I got to figure it out, but it's like it's like I'm not there yet. But it's cool, and like stringed instruments are more natural to me than keyboards, so it's very cool to be able to do that. But so I'm seeing all of these soft synths, right, and this really rich array of different interfaces and creator facing software that's been built for that sort of stuff. And then you get into the DAWs and like just think about like I came up on that was that thing called Motu. Do you remember that DAW? It was Mark of the Unicorn. I don't know. I sound like an old man yelling at cloud. But between Ableton and GarageBand and all those, there's so much thought and energy and time spent on those UIs. Have we, do artists have the equivalent for the distribution side of the puzzle? I don't think so. We're building it, and JPB ukulele rare drop. Listen, guys, I have a new baby, and I don't know.
Is that the OP1, right?
Yeah, and honestly, like I got this not because I'm a musical person, but because I'm an interface person, and just like the UI on this thing is so
cool,
freaking bananas.
It's so
Yeah,
pretty.
and I'm just it's so freaking cool. Like this thing, they did a beautiful job. So I'm just like I'm playing with this thing right now. So
yeah, I kind of want one too.
Yeah, it's well, I don't know how much I'm actually going to play this thing, so if I end up selling it, then maybe I've got a buyer. But when's the rare ukulele drop? I'll get back to you on that, Greyhound. I like that plan. We gotta get our back end creator software going a little bit. And then
get a one of one rare track because Greyhound's gonna be the only one who's interested in it.
Whoa! Is that an attack?
That was a burn.
Sorry.
Listen, maybe we can do some kind of remix contest between my ukulele and your dog song.
Yeah.
Lyric.
Ooh, yeah. I like it. You're gonna be really embarrassed by how the lyrics are now.
Well, it's getting late. Don't want to keep you here, John. This is great.
Right,
this is really, really awesome.
Super fun.
Really enjoyed it. Yeah, so good having friends here. Last call for questions. You got two seconds.
Whew. All right. Well, let's figure out who we want to go raid.
Yeah.
What kind of music do we want to go listen to?
Where are we going?
What do we got on now? I see.
We were talking about drum and bass before.
Ooh. I don't see any drum and bass artists on though.
Greyhound's saying Miss Shelton.
Yeah, Miss Shelton's on.
We've been going to her a lot. Yeah, we've been going to her a lot lately.
Jaro Bitch has 491 people tuned in right now. That's crazy. Oh, they're doing a fundraiser. That's awesome.
Oh, well, we should do that.
All right, let's go see them.
Let's go there.
Emergency aid for Ukraine. Cijaro and Pitch.
Love it. Ugh. I gotta spell it right. Is the only problem. Cijaro and Pitch. There we go. All right. Thank you very much for your time, Jonathan. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah.
We'll see you in about a month for the next one.
Anytime.
Thanks.
Adios, gang.
Yep. See ya.